Time now for the voice of the land on the Big Play Network with your hosts, Kevin Arnold and Always Positive Jay.
We were out at the Guardians game last night. Guardians are up 8-0 already. If I missed any other runs, because Jose Ramirez accounting for 5 of those 8 runs already today, with a 3-run home run in the first, a 2-run home run in the second. I think they've already pushed the starting pitcher for the Detroit Tigers to the showers. After that terrible series in Detroit where they got swept in those 4 games, and that involved another makeup game too, Peter.
Yeah, that was I think Francona said that they just played bad ball. And they did because it's really been a long time since you've looked at Detroit as being a formidable opponent in baseball, but then again, I think the Guardians/Indians, they do have a habit of playing down to their opponents, and I think there have been many times when Kansas City would be in the basement, we'd go into Kansas City and get swept, and that was always something that was very, very frustrating.
And there were years where Detroit had our number, but that's because Detroit was in a much better position than they are now.
Yeah, there was a point where Detroit really put a lot of money into their payroll, into their lineup, and made a run for it, and they were formidable. But I think typically, at least I always feel that Detroit, Kansas City, those are games that this club should pretty much always win.
They should always win, and when you're going to be playing a bunch of games going into the All-Star break and coming out of the All-Star break against the AL Central, because this is the last year, Peter, of this 18-19 game series against your division opponents. Now, next year, that's where it's supposed to take over, this new collective bargaining agreement where you're going to get the chance to play every team in the majors, so that lessens the amount of time that you have to play your own division. We'll talk about that in the future. That may help or hurt based on how the Central's been. It helps to play these teams a bunch of times as long as you win them. So being out there last night, Guardians got off to a great start. They scored 3 runs in the first inning. You have Zach Plesac on the hill, just like you got Quantrill on the hill today. These are 2 guys that are going to have to pick up their performance, and maybe an offensive outburst where the Guardians are almost leaving it, I don't want to say without a chance for Detroit to come back, because there's always a chance. We talked about
we talked about that game. What was it? Late '90s, I think, about the Seattle game, and we found out that I'm trying to remember the specifics. We were kind of talking about it last night, but the Indians were down like
12 runs
by 12 runs late in the game, and they came back and won that game in extra innings. And we found out that we were both actually at that game, about 20 some years ago.
You were in the bleachers.
I was in the bleachers with my girlfriend at the time, and my friends all gave up and left because they were like, they're not going to come back. And I didn't know if they were or not, but I want to stick around and see what happened, because it's otherwise I would have missed a spectacular game.
And that's kind of how I am too. Like I stayed to the end, especially because don't have the kind of money to go to every single game. Don't have season ticket type money or season ticket package type money to any of the teams here in Cleveland. But I try to stay to the end to get my money's worth, but also because you never know. You never know what you're going to get a chance to see when you go out to a game. So unfortunately, we did leave in the 7th inning, but I was a much younger lad at that time.
You probably didn't have much of a choice.
I did not have much of a choice. My ride was going to lead me there, and I was nowhere close to getting my own license at that time of that game. But the seats were they were different than we were up top, where kind of like those storage crates are now. I was kind of pointing out to you because we were almost diagonal to that down the third base line yesterday, right in the corner, and Grandpa, my dad, they were both out there, and Grandpa his back was starting to tighten up in those chairs and needed to go home. They're down 12 runs, so you felt okay about that. Then you listen to Tom Hamilton call the game on your way home, and it's like, oh, whoa, we're kind of missing something here. So stay up much later than my bedtime would say at that time to see the end, but. So you never know what kind of history or spectacular plays you're going to see. So a lot of people like to stick it out. for those games. And last night was one of those where we thought maybe Plesac was going to settle in a little bit. Fourth inning, he has a bunch of trouble, and we were just kind of mentioning it. Quantrill, Plesac, these are the type of guys that when the offense scores early, even though you want to be more consistent throughout the game, those are the type of guys that can shut it down pretty quickly, and you feel comfortable. If you get 3 or 4 runs in the first inning, you feel pretty comfortable flying through to the ninth inning.
Exactly, and I think one of the we were talking to some of the guys behind us, and I don't follow the Plesac's stats that well, but they were saying he doesn't get run support, and it's like, oh, we got 3 runs in the first inning, so you're expected him to at least. He seemed like he had settled in, like he seemed like he was doing well, and then all of a sudden it just kind of seemed like the wheels kind of fell off there.
You get one out in the fourth, and then he couldn't get outs, and all of a sudden you look up at the scoreboard, and we had Jana and I had gone to go get some food.
You guys left, and all of a sudden it's tied game.
I mean, if you want to put that on us, that's totally fine. I mean, and I was gonna joke around about that last night, but it's 5-3. And you're thinking, okay, now this team is really inconsistent. You're winning a game, you're losing a game. You're winning a game, you're losing a game. Against teams that, as young and as inexperienced as the Guardians are this year, they should be able to beat. And you're going to have to solidify this win, or at least win one of these next 2 games before the All-Star break, to solidify yourself being above 500. This young team is probably going to feel much better looking at the record, the standing, just past the halfway point of the season, about 5 or 6 games past it. Once tomorrow's game is all said and done, it's going to feel a lot better with the struggles they had over the last couple weeks, seeing, okay, we're a couple games above 500. We're still kind of challenging for that wild card spot. If we can get on another run as we get closer to the end of the season and play our best baseball, like we did when we were making a run for the top of the AL Central just 2-3 weeks ago, they got to feel much better and much more confident about playing on that stage.
Yeah, we had that great road trip, and then we kind of just, what was it? We had that series that we went like 1 for 6.
Yeah.
And it really just, it's like, when we talked about this before, too, was the kind of it's almost like Jekyll and Hyde, right? It's this hot, cold. It's like, they're either playing really well or they're not, or they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And there seems to be a lot of inconsistency in their play. Last night was great. They chipped their way back in and ended up winning the game.